If you play acoustic guitar, especially with your fingers, in this video I want to show you what I think are the top 5 reasons why you should choose a nylon string guitar over a steel string acoustic. Even though I love the nylon string guitar the most, I think every guitarist should have 3 types of guitars: an electric guitar, a steel string acoustic, and a nylon string. I tend to play the nylon string almost all the time, and there's a lot more stuff you can play on it than you think, but these 5 reasons keep me coming back to the nylon string over and over. Okay, number 1 is a wider neck. Here's the difference in the nut width on my old Martin here versus my nylon string. Typically, a classical guitar nylon string is going to have a wider nut, and that means the spacing between the strings will be greater on a nylon string guitar. Be careful if you are crossing over from steel string to nylon string. They have guitars that are called crossover guitars that have a narrow neck, and I don't think that that's a good thing. I like the wider neck, and you might think, well, that's more difficult to play. Like on a steel string acoustic, you can bring your thumb over. That's kind of a bad habit in some cases, not all the time. We absolutely can do that, even on a nylon. But having a wider neck allows for more spacing between the strings, and that means if you're playing just a typical chord like this C chord, for example, you don't have to be super duper on your fingertips in order to not bang against another string. When the strings are really close together, like on a steel string acoustic, you really have to be on your fingertips, and that can cause more strain in your wrist and pain in your fingertips. So you actually have a little more leeway to relax a little bit and still not bang into the string below on a nylon string guitar. Reason number 2 is string tension. The tension on an acoustic steel string is much higher than on a nylon string. Or even an electric guitar, I always recommend for beginners, if they're going to start if they don't want to play classical, for example, I think an electric guitar is better because the string tension typically is not as high as it is on an acoustic steel string. I think that's important, especially when you're starting out. And if it's a cheap guitar and the action's kind of high, it's just going to murder your fingertips. And the first, I'm kind of traumatized by this because the very first guitar I ever played was an electric guitar, an old red Gremlin electric guitar. And the strings were so high, they were like razor blades just slicing into my fingertips. And it's an absolute miracle that I wanted to keep playing guitar, and I kept playing because it just murdered my hand. But I think playability is so important, even more so than sound, in my opinion. We don't want to destroy our hands or get injuries, and we want to make it fun to play and easy to play. So every guitar you get, no matter what kind it is, you should always have the action lowered. It's going to take a little bit of the volume and the sustain away. We want to make the guitar as playable as possible, so you'll play more and you'll improve faster and you'll have more fun playing. Reason number 3 is it sounds great all over the neck. Most steel string guitars are kind of made mainly for strumming, and they can have a real bassy response sometimes. This one doesn't have that so much. But when we get up to higher frets, things can really sound thin and plinky. Whereas on a classical guitar, the guitar is made with the knowledge that you're going to be playing all over the neck, and so we're looking for a guitar that has a rich tone, not just down here when we strum those chords, but up high as well. Okay, number 4 is the feel and the sound of the strings. Especially if you're playing fingerstyle, you'll notice that the treble strings are thicker feeling, they're easier to grip, they just feel better for the right hand. Whereas on steel string, they're so thin sometimes you can barely feel them, and that gives a warmer tone and a fuller tone. Of course, that's related to why it sounds good all over the neck. That warmer sound of a nylon string guitar really is a contrast to acoustic steel string, which is definitely more trebly sounding. And if you like that trebly, thinner sound, you can kind of get that by playing closer to the bridge and having more nails. Of course, that can be problematic too. Right now, my nails are pretty short. So if you only have a steel string guitar for now and you don't like the thin sound of it, maybe try shortening your nails and playing with more fleshy fingertips on a steel string to get that warmer sound. Now, I do concede that a steel string has more sustain. That's related to the higher tension, and those steel strings just kind of ring out. We don't have that so much on a nylon string guitar, but of course nowadays we can plug in and get more volume and sustain if we need it with pedals and amps and all that stuff. But this is a drawback of all stringed instruments. They don't sustain for a long time, as opposed to a trumpet or a violin with a bow or the human voice. That's why tremolo picking exists, so that we can sustain notes, where that's a whole technique unto itself, which you would have a real hard time doing on a steel string guitar with those thin strings. Okay, now the 5th and final reason, I'm sure there's more reasons that I haven't thought of yet, why you should have a nylon string guitar and why I think it's better than a steel string acoustic, is the versatility of the nylon string guitar. Everybody calls this a classical guitar, and I kind of wish we could take that word out of it, because classical music is great, but people tend to think that, well, that's what you play on this type of guitar, classical music. I like to use the phrase nylon string guitar instead of flamenco guitar, Spanish guitar, classical guitar, because there's so many things you can do on it. That's more of a neutral phrase, nylon string guitar. You could play heavy metal, bluegrass, whatever you want, as long as you have all the techniques in the right hand down, which you can't do on a steel string guitar. If you tried to do this and play all these rasgueos on a steel string, you're gonna rip your nails up, it's gonna sound bad, and it's gonna feel horrible. Now, I play with my fingers quite a bit, but you can play with a pick absolutely on a nylon string guitar. Al Di Meola shreds on nylon string with a pick. The guy from Rodrigo y Gabriela, he plays with a pick. Willie Nelson plays on nylon string with a pick. So that's why I say the nylon string guitar is so versatile, a lot more so than maybe you ever thought. So those are the top 5 reasons that come to my mind why the nylon string guitar is so great. I'm not saying you should throw your steel string away. I still strum mine from time to time. It's definitely a different vibe when you're in that mood, but I think there's so much stuff we can do on nylon string guitar that once you cross over, but make sure it's a wide neck, you'll never go back. As I mentioned, nylon string guitar is very right hand intensive. Check out this video where I run through every single technique you need to know in the right hand.